The hall was quiet except for the soft, steady notes of the violin. A young musician stood there, completely absorbed in her music, her bow moving gently across the strings. The wooden floor reflected the warm light from the tall windows, giving the room a calm and peaceful glow. She had spent countless hours practicing here, alone, away from distractions, and it was in this space that her talent grew bit by bit. Every note she played carried her feelings, even though no one was around to hear them. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. The door opened quietly, and a tall figure stepped in. He was an elite violinist, known all over the world for his extraordinary skill and exacting standards. Even the slightest imperfection in someone else's playing could be immediately noticed by him. He walked slowly toward the young musician, watching her with a sharp but curious gaze. The girl didn't notice him at first, so focused was she on her music. Her bow moved gracefully, creating a melody that was soft, yet full of life. When she finally looked up, she saw him standing there. Her heart skipped a beat. He wasn't just any musician. He was a living legend. The kind of person who could make entire audiences go silent with just a flick of his bow. Her hands trembled slightly, and she struggled to keep the notes flowing smoothly. The violin felt heavier in her hands, as if the presence of this extraordinary man had made it more difficult to control. He didn't say anything at first. He simply listened, tilting his head slightly, taking in every detail of her playing. Then he finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "That was good, but you can do more. You have talent, but it is buried under hesitation. I want you to play for me properly." The words hit her like a wave. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She had dreamed of someone like him noticing her, but she hadn't expected to be asked to perform under such intense scrutiny. Her stomach tightened, and she looked down at her violin, wondering if she could actually meet his expectations. She nodded slowly, almost as if she were agreeing to something she wasn't sure she could do. He motioned toward the center of the room, a clear indication that she should move and begin her performance in front of him. Her hands shook as she adjusted her position, feeling every step she took echo across the polished floor. The calm, quiet hall suddenly felt immense, the walls closing in with the weight of expectation. Every sound, every tiny movement seemed amplified. Her breathing became more deliberate as she tried to calm herself. Before she could start, he spoke again. "Don't hold back. Play as if the music is a part of you. If you play hesitantly, I will know. You need to believe in yourself." His eyes were intense, but there was also something else there, a hint of curiosity, like he wanted to see what she could really do if she allowed herself to let go. She took a deep breath and lifted the bow. The first note came out shaky, uneven. She winced slightly but continued, reminding herself of every lesson she had learned over years of practice. Slowly, her confidence began to return. She felt the music in her hands and in her chest. She remembered why she had loved playing in the first place. Not for fame, not for recognition, but because it made her feel alive. As the music grew, the young musician noticed that the elite violinist had stopped walking around and was now standing still, watching intently. There was no judgment in his expression, only attention. This made her both nervous and focused. She began to play with more passion, letting the melodies rise and fall naturally. Her fingers moved with increasing precision, and the sound that filled the room started to carry emotion, a story that only music could tell. Even as she played, she felt the pressure of his gaze, a pressure that was at first terrifying but slowly began to transform into something else. It was as if he was not just watching her play but guiding her, pushing her to reach further than she thought possible. She could feel the music expanding inside her, growing stronger, bolder, more alive. Every note was becoming more confident, every phrase more expressive. The elite violinist finally spoke, interrupting a particularly difficult passage she was playing. "Slow down. Feel the notes. Don't just play them. Live them. Let the music flow through you, not from you." His words struck her deeply. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting his advice sink in. She imagined the music as a living thing, flowing naturally, connecting her to the emotions she wanted to express. When she opened her eyes and continued, the sound was different. It was more vibrant, more controlled, yet free. There was a balance between discipline and emotion, technique and feeling. For a few moments it felt like time had stopped. She was no longer nervous, no longer aware of the pressure. She was simply playing, and the music was everything. The hall seemed to breathe with her, the light reflecting off the polished wood, the silence around her deep and respectful. Even the shadows seemed to pause, listening to the story she was telling through her violin. When she finally finished, the room was silent for a beat, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then the elite violinist clapped once, sharply, with a smile that was rare and fleeting. "That was the beginning of what I know you can achieve," he said. "Do you understand? You have more inside you than you realize, and I will help you find it." Her heart raced, but it wasn't fear this time. It was excitement, relief, and determination all at once. She realized that this encounter, terrifying as it had been, was a turning point. She had been pushed beyond her comfort zone and had discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. For the first time, she truly believed that her talent was not just a dream but a reality waiting to be realized. As the elite violinist prepared to leave, he gave her a final look, one that seemed to hold a mixture of expectation and promise. "Be ready. There is much to do, and the world must hear you. But first, you must be willing to step beyond what you think you can do." The young musician watched him go, feeling a mix of awe and anticipation. She knew that her life had changed in that single hour, that the path ahead would be challenging, and that she would face pressure unlike anything she had experienced before. But she also knew that this was her chance, a moment that would define her future as a musician. Alone again in the hall, she lifted her violin once more, testing the strings, feeling the weight of possibility in her hands. The quiet room no longer felt intimidating. Instead, it felt like a canvas, ready to hold the music she would pour into it. She understood that the journey would not be easy, but she was ready to embrace it. Every note she played from now on would be a step toward greatness, a testament to the talent and determination that had been recognized in that one extraordinary moment. The next morning, the young musician woke with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of the elite violinist's visit still lingered in her mind, filling her with both inspiration and pressure. She knew she had to practice more, to push herself harder than ever before. The quiet music hall, where she had spent so many solitary hours, now seemed alive with possibilities, but also with the weight of expectation. She spent the early hours going over every piece she had learned. Her fingers moved across the strings, careful and deliberate. Each note was a challenge, a small test of her patience, skill, and endurance. She corrected mistakes, repeated difficult passages, and focused on perfecting every detail. She remembered the elite violinist's words, "Don't just play the notes, live them." Those words replayed in her mind like a mantra. She had to feel the music fully, not just with her fingers, but with her heart and soul. As the morning sun poured through the windows, she noticed a change in herself. The nervous tension she had felt the day before began to transform into determination. She realized that the pressure was not just an obstacle, it was a guide. It forced her to confront her limits and stretch beyond them. Every time she played a difficult passage perfectly, she felt a small surge of confidence, a quiet affirmation that she could meet the expectations that had been set for her. Later in the afternoon, there was a knock on the hall door. She looked up, heart racing. The elite violinist had returned, but this time he was carrying a music stand and a small notebook. He walked in with the same calm authority, his eyes assessing, but with a trace of warmth that made the tension slightly easier to bear. He did not waste time on pleasantries. "Today we work. Are you ready?" he asked. She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. The practice session began immediately, and it was intense. He guided her through every piece, stopping frequently to correct posture, fingering, and bowing. Each correction felt like a challenge, sometimes even frustrating, but she understood that it was all part of the process. His expectations were high, but fair. Every note had to be precise, every rhythm exact, and every emotion genuine. As hours passed, the young musician felt the strain. Her arms ached, her back was stiff, and her concentration wavered at times. But the elite violinist's presence pushed her to keep going. Whenever she hesitated, he reminded her gently but firmly, "You can do this. Trust your ability. Let the music guide you." By late afternoon, he asked her to play a piece she had never performed in front of anyone before. It was complex, with fast passages and intricate rhythms. Her fingers faltered at first, but she remembered all the hours she had practiced alone. Slowly, her confidence returned, and she played with focus and precision. The notes flowed smoothly, the melody rising and falling with emotion. She could feel the music connecting to her own experiences, her own feelings, and it made the performance even more powerful. The elite violinist watched silently, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. When she finished, he leaned forward slightly, his eyes bright. "Much better," he said. "But now we go deeper. You need to understand the story behind each note. Music is not just sound, it is emotion, memory, and thought combined. You must tell a story with every movement of your bow." She took a deep breath, feeling the challenge pressing on her. It was no longer just about playing the right notes. It was about conveying something much larger. She began again, this time imagining the story behind the music. A tale of struggle, hope, and triumph. She let herself feel every emotion as she played, allowing her body and mind to move as one with the violin. Hours passed in this manner. The young musician practiced tirelessly, guided by the elite violinist's exacting standards. At times, she wanted to give up, to rest, to escape the intensity. But each time she felt that, she reminded herself of the reason she had started playing the violin in the first place. She loved it, not for fame or applause, but for the connection it gave her to something greater, something beyond herself. During a brief pause, she sat quietly, violin resting on her shoulder. The elite violinist walked over and placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You are improving quickly," he said. "But remember, true mastery is not just about skill. It is about resilience, patience, and the ability to push through discomfort. That is what separates good musicians from truly great ones." She listened, absorbing every word. She understood now that the pressure she felt was a necessary part of growth. It was not meant to punish her, but to guide her to a higher level. Every correction, every instruction, every moment of intensity was a step toward becoming the musician she wanted to be. As the evening approached, the hall grew quiet once more. The sunlight faded, and the room was bathed in the soft glow of lamps. She played a final piece, a favorite that she had performed many times before. But tonight it was different. She played with more confidence, more feeling, and more control. The music seemed to fill the space, echoing softly against the walls. She could feel the improvement, the progress that had been made in just a single day. When she finished, the elite violinist smiled, a rare and genuine expression that made her heart lift. "You have potential beyond your age and experience," he said. "But potential alone is not enough. You must continue to work, to push, to challenge yourself every day. Only then will your talent truly shine." The young musician nodded, feeling a sense of pride and determination. The pressure she had felt earlier was now a source of motivation. She realized that growth often comes through challenge, and that being pushed beyond comfort was not something to fear, but something to embrace. The intensity of the day had been exhausting, but it had also been transformative. As she packed up her violin and music sheets, she reflected on everything she had learned. The elite violinist's guidance had shown her not only how to improve technically, but also how to approach music with a deeper understanding and emotion. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew she was capable of taking it. That night, she lay awake thinking about the day's lessons. Every correction, every word of advice, every moment of pressure had been a building block. She felt a quiet sense of anticipation for the days to come, ready to face the challenges and to discover the full extent of her own abilities. The journey was only beginning, but she already felt stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever. She understood that with persistence, resilience, and passion, she could reach heights she had only dreamed of before. The next day arrived with a sense of anticipation that filled the young musician's heart. She woke early, feeling both excitement and nervousness. Today, she would perform in front of a small audience invited by the elite violinist. The thought of strangers listening to her music made her pulse quicken, but she reminded herself of all the practice and guidance she had received. She had worked tirelessly, and now it was time to step beyond the quiet halls and show the results. She arrived at the performance hall, a space larger than she had ever played in. The polished wooden floor gleamed under soft lights, and the walls reflected the elegance of the room. Chairs were arranged neatly, a small audience already beginning to gather. The elite violinist was there, standing at the side, his expression calm yet watchful. He gave her a nod, signaling that it was time. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her position and lifted her violin. She took a deep breath, remembering the mantra he had given her. Play with your heart, not just your hands. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself focus on the music, letting go of fear. When she opened them again, she saw the audience waiting silently, their eyes fixed on her. The hall was quiet except for the soft rustling of people settling into their seats. She drew her bow across the strings, and the first notes emerged, tentative but clear. She felt a surge of adrenaline, her heart beating in rhythm with the melody. At first, her fingers were slightly unsure, but she reminded herself of the hours she had spent practicing, the guidance she had received, and slowly the music began to flow more naturally. Each note carried her emotions, rising and falling with the story she wanted to tell. The elite violinist watched intently, occasionally leaning forward, observing every movement. He did not speak, but his presence was a steady anchor, giving her both pressure and support. She could feel the energy of the room, the anticipation of the audience, and she let it fuel her performance rather than hinder it. Her confidence grew with every phrase, every movement of the bow. As the piece progressed, she began to immerse herself fully. The music was no longer something she played. It became an extension of herself. Her body moved with the rhythm. Her emotions poured through every note. She was telling a story, not just performing a song. The audience, silent and captivated, seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for each moment to unfold. She reached a particularly difficult section, one she had struggled with in practice. Her fingers flew across the strings, executing the fast passages with precision and grace. The music built in intensity, rising to a climax that demanded every ounce of her focus and skill. She could feel her heart pounding, but instead of fear, it was exhilaration. She was alive in the music, and it carried her beyond hesitation. The elite violinist finally spoke, interrupting briefly to guide her through a tricky transition. Breathe through it. Feel the motion, let it flow naturally, he said. His voice was calm, but there was authority in it that demanded attention. She nodded slightly, adjusting her posture and movement, and when she resumed, the music became even more fluid. She felt a connection, not just to the instrument, but to the story she was telling and the audience who was listening. The room seemed to shrink around her as she played, the focus narrowing to the violin and the sound it produced. She forgot everything else, the pressure, the nervousness, even the presence of the elite violinist for a moment. It was just her and the music. Every note, every pause, every subtle change in tempo became a part of the narrative she was creating. She could sense the audience responding, even without seeing them clearly. Their engagement felt almost tangible. When she reached the final notes, she poured all her energy into the last phrase. The music swelled, then softened, and she let the final note linger in the air before slowly releasing it. Silence followed for a heartbeat, a suspended moment where time itself seemed to pause. Then, the applause began, soft at first, then growing into enthusiastic claps and murmurs of amazement. She lowered her violin, her hands trembling, and looked up to see the elite violinist smiling, nodding in approval. She felt a wave of relief and pride. The performance had gone better than she could have imagined, and the realization that she had conveyed her emotions and skill to an audience filled her with joy. She had been nervous, but she had not let it control her. Instead, she had allowed the music to guide her, and in doing so, she had surprised herself as much as she had impressed others. After the audience had quieted, the elite violinist approached her. "You see what you are capable of when you let go of fear?" he asked. "This is just the beginning. Your talent is remarkable, but you must continue to grow, to challenge yourself, to reach beyond what you think is possible." She nodded, still catching her breath, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. She understood now that this performance was not the end, but a step forward in her journey. The pressure she had felt was not something to avoid. It was something that helped her discover her true ability. Each challenge, each moment of doubt, had prepared her for this achievement. The audience slowly began to leave, but many lingered, whispering among themselves about the young violinist who had captivated them so completely. Some approached her to express their admiration, their words encouraging and heartfelt. She smiled, grateful, but inside she knew that the real reward was not in their praise, but in the confidence and skill she had gained through the experience. As the hall emptied, she sat quietly, violin resting on her shoulder, reflecting on the day. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. The performance had tested her, pushed her beyond comfort, and she had risen to the challenge. The elite violinist's guidance had been strict, sometimes intimidating, but it had brought out the best in her. She realized that talent alone was not enough. It required discipline, courage, and the willingness to face fear. That night, she practiced again, revisiting the pieces from the day with renewed focus. Every note felt different, more alive, more meaningful. The experience of performing had changed the way she approached music. It was no longer just practice or preparation. It was expression, connection, and storytelling. She understood that each performance was an opportunity to communicate something beyond words, to reach the hearts of those who listened. As she put her violin away and left the hall, she felt a quiet determination. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more performances, and higher expectations. But she also knew that she had taken an important step. She had discovered a strength within herself, a combination of skill, emotion, and resilience that would guide her through the difficult days ahead. The music was no longer just a part of her life. It was a path, a calling, and she was ready to follow it wherever it led. The following morning, the young violinist woke with a sense of purpose that she had never felt before. The previous day's performance had changed her, given her a taste of what she was capable of, and now she was determined to reach even higher. She arrived at the hall early, the wooden floor gleaming in the soft morning light, and her violin tucked carefully under her arm. The elite violinist was already there, adjusting the music stand and watching her approach with a steady, focused gaze. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he gestured for her to play, and she did, lifting her bow with a quiet determination. The notes started softly, almost like a whisper, but there was a precision and control in them that had not been there before. She felt the music flowing through her in a way that was both natural and exhilarating. Her fingers moved confidently across the strings, each note clear and deliberate. The elite violinist watched closely, his eyes narrowing with attention, as if analyzing every nuance of her performance. As she continued, something changed. The music grew stronger, more expressive, more alive. She was no longer just playing the notes. She was telling a story, her story, through the violin. Every movement, every pause, every swell of sound carried emotion. She could feel the music reaching beyond herself, touching something larger, something universal. The hall seemed to respond, the air vibrating with the intensity of the performance. The elite violinist stepped closer, his posture alert. He did not need to say anything. His presence alone drove her to push further, to explore the limits of her ability. She experimented with subtle changes in tempo, with dynamics that added depth and color to the piece. Her bow danced across the strings, creating a tapestry of sound that was both intricate and powerful. The notes that once felt difficult now flowed naturally, as if they were an extension of her own thoughts and emotions. There was a moment when she reached a particularly complex passage, one she had practiced countless times but never fully mastered under pressure. Her heart raced, her fingers flew, and for a brief second, she feared she would falter. But then she remembered the elite violinist's guidance. Feel the music, don't just play it, let it guide you. She let go of her fear, closed her eyes, and allowed the music to flow freely. What came out was not just technically correct, but breathtakingly beautiful. Every note resonated with emotion, and the sound filled the room in a way that seemed almost magical. Opening her eyes, she saw the elite violinist's expression had changed. His usual calm demeanor had been replaced by something rare, astonishment. He nodded subtly, a faint smile on his lips, as if acknowledging a remarkable breakthrough. She felt a surge of confidence, a quiet thrill that she had never experienced before. She knew she had reached a level that even she had not expected. The young violinist continued, pushing herself further. She added subtle flourishes, small improvisations that enhanced the music without breaking its essence. She could feel the story unfolding with each note, the struggles, the triumphs, the emotions that could not be captured in words. The hall seemed to vibrate with her energy, every corner filled with the sound of her playing. It was as if time itself had stopped, leaving only the music and her. When she reached the final section, she poured every ounce of emotion, skill, and passion into the closing notes. The sound swelled, powerful and pure, then softened to a gentle, lingering conclusion. Silence followed, heavy and profound, as if the world itself had paused to listen. For a moment, she could hear only her own heartbeat, the quiet resonance of the strings, and the lingering echo of the last note. The elite violinist finally spoke, his voice filled with admiration. "That was extraordinary," he said, his eyes shining. "I have never witnessed such depth and expression from someone so young. You have taken everything I have taught you and gone beyond it. This is genius. Truly, your talent is beyond words." Her breath caught in her throat. She had been pushed, challenged, and tested, but this acknowledgement was more powerful than any applause. It was the recognition of her true ability, the validation that all the hours of practice, all the pressure, all the moments of doubt had led to this point. She felt a mixture of pride, humility, and a renewed determination to continue growing. The elite violinist stepped back, giving her space, but his eyes never left her. "Remember this feeling," he said. "The moment when you reach beyond what you thought possible. This is the path you must follow. There will be more challenges, but if you continue to push, to explore, to listen to the music within, you will leave an impression on the world that cannot be forgotten." She nodded, tears threatening to spill, but she held them back. This was not about fame or recognition, it was about discovery, about reaching a level of artistry that connected her to something greater. She had discovered a voice through her violin, one that could convey emotion, story, and beauty in a way that transcended words. As the morning turned into afternoon, she continued to play, experimenting with new pieces and revisiting old ones with fresh understanding. Each note, each phrase, each pause carried more meaning than before. The hall itself seemed alive with the music, responding to her touch, echoing her emotions back to her. She could feel the transformation taking place within herself, the shift from a skilled player to a true artist, capable of moving hearts and minds with the power of her music. The elite violinist occasionally interjected with guidance, but mostly he watched in awe, witnessing the young musician unfold her full potential. He offered small corrections here and there, but his praise was genuine and rare. He recognized what few could see so early, the emergence of a prodigious talent, someone whose genius would leave everyone speechless if nurtured and challenged. By evening, she was exhausted, but exhilarated. Her fingers ached, her body was tired, yet her spirit felt lighter and freer than ever. She had reached a level of performance that felt almost untouchable, a moment of pure musical expression. She knew this was only the beginning, but the experience had changed her forever. She had discovered the power within herself to not just play music, but to make it come alive, to tell stories and evoke emotions that lingered long after the final note faded. As she packed her violin and left the hall, she glanced back at the empty space, feeling gratitude for the challenges, the pressure, and the guidance that had brought her here. She understood that genius was not simply about talent. It was about perseverance, courage, and the willingness to push beyond fear. And she knew, deep in her heart, that she had only just begun to explore the vast potential of her gift. The world had yet to hear the true depth of her music, but she was ready to let it shine, leaving everyone who listened utterly speechless. The next morning, the young violinist awoke with a quiet determination. She knew that the journey she had begun was far from over. The experiences of the past days, the intense practice sessions, the high-pressure performances, and the guidance from the elite violinist had transformed her in ways she could hardly measure. She felt stronger, more focused, and more confident than ever before. Yet she also understood that true mastery required continual effort and humility. She arrived at the hall early, her violin case in hand, and found the space bathed in soft morning light. The elite violinist was already there, reviewing notes and adjusting stands. He glanced up as she entered, offering a small nod of acknowledgement. There was no need for words. The mutual understanding between them had grown over the past days. This was the day she would perform for a larger audience, a chance to showcase the full extent of her talent. The room was buzzing with quiet anticipation as musicians, patrons, and music enthusiasts began to take their seats. The young violinist felt a familiar rush of nerves, but it was different this time. She recognized the tension not as fear, but as a signal that she was about to step into something meaningful. She breathed deeply, letting the rhythm of her own heartbeat settle her, and lifted her violin with a steady hand. As the performance began, she felt the music flowing naturally. Each note was deliberate, each pause intentional. The melodies carried the weight of emotion, reflecting the hours of practice, the pressure she had endured, and the growth she had experienced. The audience was captivated, silent, and absorbed, as if the music itself had drawn them into another world. Her fingers danced across the strings, precise and expressive, every movement conveying not just skill, but passion and depth. Midway through the performance, she reached a particularly challenging section, one that demanded technical mastery and emotional intensity simultaneously. She remembered all the corrections and guidance the elite violinist had offered, how he had pushed her to feel the music rather than simply play it. She closed her eyes briefly, visualizing the story within the music, and let her instincts guide her fingers. The notes flowed flawlessly, rising and falling with perfect rhythm and expression. The hall seemed to hold its breath, the audience fully immersed in the narrative she created through sound. The elite violinist watched intently, his usual composure giving way to an unmistakable sense of admiration. Her performance was no longer just technically impressive. It was profound, moving, and alive. He had seen many talented musicians in his life, but this was something different. There was a spark of originality, a depth of emotion that left him momentarily speechless. He realized that she had not only absorbed his teaching but had also discovered her unique voice, her individual genius. As the final notes approached, she poured all her energy and emotion into the closing passage. The music swelled and softened, creating a powerful conclusion that seemed to resonate with every person in the hall. The final note lingered in the air, vibrating with the intensity of the performance. For a moment, there was silence, as if the world had paused to absorb the beauty of what she had created. Then, the applause erupted. It started softly, with gentle clapping and murmurs of admiration, but quickly grew into a wave of enthusiastic ovation. People stood, some with tears in their eyes, others unable to speak, captivated by the sheer brilliance and emotional depth of her performance. She lowered her violin, her hands trembling, feeling a mixture of exhilaration, relief, and pride. The recognition was overwhelming, but what mattered most to her was the realization that she had shared a part of herself through music, connecting with others in a profound and meaningful way. The elite violinist stepped forward, his eyes shining with approval. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of personal praise. "You have achieved something extraordinary," he said. "Not only have you mastered the technique, but you have also found the heart of the music. This is the mark of a true artist. Remember this moment and carry it forward. Your journey is just beginning, and the world must hear your music." Her heart swelled with gratitude and determination. She understood now that the path of a musician was never easy. It was filled with challenges, pressure, and moments of doubt. Yet it was precisely these experiences that had forged her growth, shaping her talent into something remarkable. She had been compelled to step beyond her comfort zone, and in doing so had discovered her true potential. The recognition she received today was not the goal. It was a reflection of the hard work, perseverance, and courage she had invested in her art. After the audience dispersed, she remained in the hall, letting the echoes of the performance settle around her. The music lingered in the air, a reminder of the connection she had created. She ran her fingers lightly over the strings, feeling the vibration and resonance, reflecting on how far she had come. Each note, each phrase, each melody was now a part of her story, a testament to her dedication and resilience. The elite violinist sat nearby, reviewing his notes, yet he occasionally glanced at her with a sense of quiet pride. "You have learned more in these past days than many do in years," he said. "But remember, growth is continuous. There will always be new challenges, new heights to reach. The key is to remain curious, to remain dedicated, and to never lose the joy that brought you to music in the first place." She nodded, absorbing every word. She realized that her journey was far from over, that there would always be more to learn, more to explore, and more to express. Yet she also understood that she had achieved something meaningful. She had found her voice, her artistic identity, and her ability to touch others with her music. The challenges she had faced, the pressure she had endured, and the guidance she had received had all contributed to this profound moment of self-discovery and expression. That evening, as she walked home with her violin safely tucked under her arm, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The experience had taught her the value of perseverance, the importance of embracing challenges, and the power of dedication. She reflected on the path ahead, aware that there would be more obstacles, more expectations, and more opportunities to prove herself. Yet she was ready, strengthened by her experiences and inspired by the recognition of her potential. She understood that true artistry was not just about technical skill or public acclaim. It was about connecting with something deeper, something that transcended words and gestures. Music was a language of the soul, and she had begun to speak it fluently. The journey had been demanding, and it would continue to be, but she welcomed it with open arms. Each day, each practice session, each performance was another step toward realizing the full extent of her talent and sharing it with the world. As she prepared for the nights and days ahead, she carried with her a quiet confidence and a renewed sense of purpose. The pressure, the guidance, the intense practice, and the moments of doubt had all been necessary for her growth. She knew that the road of a musician was never smooth, but she also knew that she had the strength, resilience, and passion to continue, to rise above challenges, and to leave a lasting impact through her music. And so, with the violin in her hands and the music in her heart, she stepped forward into the next chapter of her life, ready to embrace every challenge, every opportunity, and every moment of expression. The journey was ongoing, but she had already discovered the essence of her genius and the power of her voice. The world had listened, and she was determined to ensure that it would continue to hear her story, note by note, melody by melody, leaving everyone who listened profoundly moved and inspired.